today. Each speaker will be permitted up to 3 minutes for comment with a verbal prompt provided to assist with the timekeeping. While we are open to topics included in our agenda for discussion, there are a few items that are not permitted as items for public expression. These include issues under negotiation as part of the university's collective bargaining process, the employment status of any specific individual, statements concerning the private activities, lifestyles, or beliefs of individuals employed by or associated with the university, grievances of individual students or employees, proposals or bids for contracts, or pending or threatened litigation involving the university. As I introduce each speaker, I would ask that you please come to the podium to make your remarks. And our first speaker today is Barry Fenchak, a Penn State alumnus who has asked to comment on reform parameters.
As I'm sure we're all aware, Senator Yudichak is in the process of developing legislative action to reform the Penn State Board. According to his memorandum, Yudichak seeks to create an accountable governance board. His actions are prompted by the fact that here at Penn State, we have a group of trustees that are entirely unaccountable. How important is accountability? Perhaps we could consider a situation where a given trustee working professionally in the real estate and construction business had defaulted on his debt, leading to the bankruptcy of that business. Would this alone cause us to question that individual's suitability as a trustee? Probably not. But what if that individual and his businesses had been found guilty in dozens of civil actions in order to make settlements of hundreds of thousands of dollars to various plaintiffs? What if, along with a business associate, the individual was a co-defendant in a federal antitrust suit stemming from his business practices? And if, on top of that, the associate had since been convicted of fraud for submitting fake invoices in order to steal hundreds of thousands of dollars from a condominium construction project in Philadelphia? Is that someone that the stakeholders of Penn State might not want to have representing them on this board? If on this board, might the stakeholders be extremely concerned if that individual was also involved in the allocation of hundreds of millions of dollars of Penn State's construction funds? I expect we would be more than a bit concerned. And yet, Mark Dambley sits not only on the Penn State Board, but is the chairperson of the committee that oversees Penn State's capital projects. And there's not a darn thing that we as stakeholders can do about it, because Dambley serves as an unelected, unaccountable governor appointee. Hopefully Governor Wolf is aware and will soon determine whether or not he wishes to allow such a trustee to continue to serve under his name. Sadly, this is but one of many similar narratives that could be discussed regarding our unaccountable trustees. We all know that the genesis of so many of the issues we face lies with this unaccountable board. It's appropriate that we're here today at Hershey Medical Center, the site where the efforts of hundreds, if not thousands, of Penn Staters are put to work to try and eradicate pediatric cancer. Because here in this room lies the cancer that afflicts Penn State. And Penn Staters need to put just as much energy into eradicating this cancer as those children up at University Park put into the thon every year. Now is the time for all true Penn Staters to demand that our alma mater be released from the clutches of these unauthorized pirates that are here today. This university, which has given so much to all of us, is now in her hour of greatest need. Do we stand up for her? Or do we join the long list of those who have failed her, many of them here in this room? It's up to us. And unless we change the way this board is composed, we will have all failed this university. The ladies and gentlemen, this is the cancer that afflicts Penn State. Thank you.
Next alumnus, Jeff Goldsmith, has asked to speak on board structure.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time that we talk a little bit about the realities facing this university and this Board of Trustees. The reality is that in 2011, this board failed to get ahead of the Jerry Sandusky scandal. And in order to deflect attention from their lack of action, they paid millions of dollars to Louis Freeh to scapegoat Joe Paterno and the football team What was at fault was the very structure of this board, an unengaged, uninterested, and uninvolved, much too large board. Now, many people have given you suggestions for reform. The reality is, you have the votes to ignore them. But here's another reality. The Senate is now considering new reforms for the university, reforms that will inject the state more into the operation of this university than ever. And I don't think that's a positive thing. But you've brought it upon yourself. They have the ability. That's reality. The legislature created this university, and the legislature has final authority over this university. And again, you're not getting on top of it. Many people, myself included, have given you plans for reform. Trustee Duran gave you a real map for reform, and you ignored it. If you take a step back and decide to become proactive and put on hold the implementation of your fake reform proposal, the state may take a second look. Engage the state, work with them, work with alumni, and work with true reformers to get this body in a position that will be responsive, responsible, and accountable. If you don't do it, the state will do it for you. It's time that we stop being reactive. It's time we start being proactive and move forward for the betterment of this university. Thank you.
Speaking next will be alumnus Steve Masters on consistency of Board of Trustees statements.
My name is Steve Masters. Thank you for allowing me to address the board. I'm a Penn State graduate. My father was a Penn State professor. My brother, sister, and mother are all Penn State graduates. We're a proud Penn State family. I am deeply distressed by the damage inflicted upon Penn State institution that I dearly love as a result of the events of the past several years. There is no convincing evidence that Penn State did anything wrong. The crisis was caused by self-inflicted wounds and will end up being a cautionary tale of what not to do in a time of crisis. Kudos to Judge Ann Covey for questioning the validity of the consent decree and allowing for an objective, dispassionate view of what happened. The discovery in the Corman v. NCAA case exposed the backroom deals between the board, Louis Freeh, and the NCAA. The Freeh report is a farce. It is incomplete and based on speculation. It is past time for the board to do an independent review of the Freeh report. A very strong argument could be made that Joe Paterno, Tim Curley, Gary Schultz, and Graham Spaniard all acted appropriately in their response to what was known at the time. The board should not have conceded any culpability until after malfeasance had been established. The hasty decision to concede its culpability was rash and irresponsible. The board was derelict in its fiduciary responsibilities by accepting the consent decree and offering settlements prematurely. I believe the board was less than truthful when they said they fired Joe Paterno for a failure of leadership, when as shown in the Freeh report, that it was really done to appease public opinion. When it was shown by Ken Frazier's deposition that it was really done to appease public opinion. It seems that the board was more concerned with personal agendas than with the well-being of the university. In the process, the reputation of 4 honorable men were tarnished. The board has caused irreparable damage to these men and others, as well as to the university. It is time for this to end. I would like to see the board, 1, conduct an independent review of the Freeh report post haste. 2, conduct an investigation into how this unnecessary crisis was created and who the responsible parties are. And 3, return the statue of Joe Paterno to where it belongs. Thank you for your attention.
Next will be alumna Wendy Silverwood on the Penn State Network on Child Protection and Well-Being.
In reading through Dr. Spaniard's 140-page complaint against Freeh, I am struck with these terms: recklessly, purposely chose not to, reckless disregard, avoided, conscious disregard. On July 12, 2012, Louis Freeh launched his assault on Penn State via PowerPoint, Twitter, and an army of satellite trucks parked outside the Westin. Susan Candiotti played his major general. Recklessly, purposely chose not to, reckless disregard, avoided, and conscious disregard. For the truth. The Freeh report falsely blamed Dr. Spanier, other university officials, and Coach Joe Paterno in a planned effort to enable the university to compartmentalize responsibility for Sandusky's conduct and quickly move forward. In doing so, Louis Freeh colluded with Ken Frazier and Ron Tamales to target Dr. Spanier, destroy reputations, and hide failures by county and state agencies. Louis Freeh, Ken Frazier, and Karen Pietz's false, malicious, and defamatory statements to the media regarding Spanier, Paterno, Curley, and Schultz continue to this day by that media. Sarah Ganem's opinion piece published yesterday still reeks of it. Recklessly, purposely chose not to, reckless disregard, avoided, conscious disregard for the truth. The remarkably flawed Freeh report, together with other defamatory materials, are still available on Penn State's website to this day. For a flagship institution of higher learning in constant search for the truth that trumpets teaching, research, and service, this is extremely distressing and disturbing. Recklessly, purposely chose not to, reckless disregard, avoided, conscious disregard. For the truth. Penn State is investing $12 million in an endowment that advances the university's academic mission of research, education, and service, focusing on child maltreatment. These funds originated from $60 million that the university dedicated for these efforts. Half of the remaining $48 million will go to the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency to support grants over the next 5 years. Ironically, this is the agency that would have overseen a Commonwealth-financed fund for the victims of Sandusky had our Commonwealth actually taken responsibility for its failures. But it has not. Recklessly, purposely chose not to, reckless disregard, avoided, conscious disregard for the truth. To borrow from Ken Frazier, oh brother. Will the university do the right thing in using a portion of that endowment, hold a national panel discussion with professionals such as Jim Clementi, Dick Thornburg, network doctors Frazier and Knoll, using valid research to teach the nation about pillar of the community offenders and truly serve Pennsylvania parents, children, and caregivers? Will it apologize to the Paterno family, the Letterman, the 4 principals it torched, the community it scorched, and honor Joe without an asterisk? Or will it continue to push the false narrative? Recklessly, purposely chose not to, recklessly disregard, avoid, consciously disregard the truth.
Stephen Payne, a Penn State student, has asked to address the board on the naming of the Blue Band building as well as tuition advocacy and student representation issues. Stephen?
Good morning, everyone. It is my distinct honor and privilege to have the opportunity to speak to all of you this morning. My name is Stephen Payne, and I am a senior at Penn State University Park, double majoring in education and public policy and communication arts and sciences. I'm a proud third-generation Penn Stater. Thank you, and as always, raise the song.
Thank you, Steve. Denise McClellan, also a Penn State alumna, has asked to address the board on the relevant importance of the arts in education.
I apologize, I have a head and chest cold. It seems to me little is discussed these days regarding the terrific arts programs and performances at Penn State. From the Center of the Performing Arts to the University Arts Gallery at Penn State, they all host a roster of patrons, whether they're local families, students, parents, or large donors. They bring a significant pool of donations to Penn State. But who wants to donate to a university that's being run by an elite group of the BOT? a group who appears to believe there's a caste system where some are above the law, a group not meeting responsibilities, talking in secret, breaking rules, and snubbing the very alumni from whom they solicit their funds. How do you have time to run and protect a university when you're tied up in lawsuits? Well, how do you have the best interest of its students in your trust when you're giving away millions and millions, eventually trillions of dollars? How do you look after dear old state when you create division, unrest, and damage to a local community? The answer is you don't, as we've seen. Now I'm talking to you people on the live stream, the Penn Staters that matter. We'll continue to come to these mock of public comment sessions as long as they let us. But we're also going to shadow these meetings. We're going to have our own open forums to speak among each other to move forward at Penn State. We had one 2 Sundays ago. 12 of us showed up and had some great solutions to help the university. So I'll keep you posted there. You're going to have a place to talk where you'll be heard. And to the elected alumni representatives, it's important too that you are also accountable. Therefore, first I want to thank you for all the great work you've done and the moves forward. But without compromising negotiations, I'd like to propose that we elect a liaison that can come and talk to us and let us know what you're doing. I'd like an annual report of what you've been working on and what your accomplishments are, so I knew who I'm voting for. One liaison would help the group of alumni quite a bit. And to my fellow Penn Staters, come on, we gotta hang together. We have a mission here to get rid of the toxic waste and get back to honor. Trustees must be trustworthy. The recent deposition at the Spanier lawsuit showed that Joe Paterno was fired solely for public relations reason. Mr. Frazier and Mr. Masser's depositions show they not only threw Joe under the bus, but they lied to the public and to the university about what's really going on. Where's the fiduciary responsibility? Why would people want to donate? I love my hometown, I love my school, I love my university. Thank you for letting me talk for the glory.
Our last speaker, Melissa McCleary, a current student and a member of the Sexual Assault and Sexual Harassment Task Force, would like to discuss how to maintain focus on the issue moving forward.
Thank you. My name is Melissa. Thanks for having me here today. The report of the Sexual Assault and Sexual Harassment Task Force demonstrated for the university community the extensive scope of the problem of sexual violence at Penn State. Statistically speaking, with a reporting rate for sexual assault of about 10% and over 20 assaults reported so far this academic year, there are hundreds of survivors of sexual assault at Penn State who deserve to have their stories heard and their experiences recognized. I hope the board completely and fully acknowledges the extent of this problem. For anyone to deny it is a disservice and insult to those survivors and shows a misunderstanding of student life. I have been disappointed in the actions of some board members in response to this issue. I was particularly upset about a trustee who rolled their eyes at the January presentation of the task force and later refused to apologize for it. I have never in my life felt so disrespected and insulted by another human being. However, I've also dealt with trustees who are activists against domestic violence and who have asked pointed and intelligent questions about what the board can do to address this type of violence at Penn State. I want those people running my university. I encourage all board members to follow their examples. As a student who was on this task force and worked hard for 14 weeks for 2 hours at 7:30 in the morning, I can attest to the extreme importance of this report. The issue of sexual misconduct is important to the university and higher ed as a whole, most importantly because it has profound human cost. I ask the board to maintain strict focus on ending sexual violence at Penn State. Read our task force report in full. Ask questions, have discussions, and help Dr. Barron in implementing the task force's 18 recommendations. Help us ensure that Penn State is a leader in taking action against these deplorable crimes. Anything less is unacceptable. Thank you.
On behalf of the board, thank you all for taking the time to come to Hershey.